Thanks, Scott. I mean, there were a lot of takeaways from the first two talks. One that jumped out at me was we have a lot of angry birds and farm animals. I think we need some anger management. So this will kind of be a panel in 3 acts. We're going to talk with very different hardware, software methodologies, some overlap, of how we're harnessing technology to empower kids. And we're going to kind of do a whip around to talk about what we're doing. We've sort of limited ourselves to one PowerPoint slide. It'll be interesting with all of this digital youth and all of these interventions 20 years from now, whether people are still using PowerPoint and struggling to connect the computer to the projector. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and we agreed that we would have very short videos that actually showed kids interacting with the technology and hardware and software, because sometimes it's hard to remember what it's really like when the kids are using it. So it helped to sort of anchor each of the presentations. They'll be very short. Then we're going to walk around, and I think part of the goal of this panel is to talk about what's not working. Where is technology not the answer? Where are we struggling with technology? Debate that a little bit. Discuss that, and then I really want to open it up more to a discussion with the audience, find out again where you're finding technology is really working, but also very much where it's not working and where you think it shouldn't be working, and then see if we can emerge with some best practices. So we're going to start with actually Sara from PBS. So Scott, if you want to pull up Sara's slide. Sara will talk a little bit about what she's doing and has some really good videos.
Great, so hi everyone.
Hi.
Hello everyone. Okay. My name is Sara DeWitt. I'm from PBSKids Interactive. I have been there 12 years, so I've been through many, many technology changes, always in the technology group though. So, you know, my first job was actually creating table cells for the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood website. So we've changed a lot over that time. PBSKids is probably most well known as a TV entity, but the website, pbskids.org, is also very much a part of kids' lives now. We reach over 11 million unique visitors per month. We are the #1 streaming video site for kids. We deliver over 115 million streams per month, which is kind of a mind-boggling number. Just a little side note, when we launched the site, we had predicted that we would stream 5 million. So 115 million is a funny problem to have. Exciting, but also, you know, as you all know who work on interactive things, you actually have to pay for all those streams. So it's a different world that we're entering. We also have launched 12 different apps for kids, and we're doing a lot of research into how kids are learning with these new platforms. Really, our mantra at PBSKids has been that every technology is a new opportunity for learning. How can we take whatever this is and think about how we can use it to help kids move the needle and to learn more through that technology experiment. And this is part of our legacy. In 1968, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was experimenting with television, and a year later, Sesame Street was doing the same. And so we are definitely always thinking about what comes next. How can we use this media as a powerful tool in kids' lives? And a lot of the producers who make up PBSKids are in the room. I mean, I just realized I was looking at Sesame Workshop when I said that. WGBH is here. Lots of our folks make up PBSKids. So a few things that we're thinking about right now. Certainly the word transmedia is being used a lot. And as a company that started with a lot of video-based narrative content, we've been thinking about how to tell those stories across other platforms, and really recognizing that transmedia is not just multi-platform. It's really about making those connections between the different platforms so that kids can engage with those characters and engage with those learning goals despite the way that they enter into that character's world. So the apps that we're creating aren't supposed to be, I mean, they are standalone, but they aren't supposed to be completely disconnected with what's happening. If you watch Super Y on television and you play that Super Y app, you realize that those are very connected experiences. The characters sound the same, the experience is the same, and they're really trying to tackle those same educational goals. So some of the things we're working on right now, we have a grant from the U.S. Department of Education where we're focusing on some transmedia content research. One of the things we're doing is is we've tasked 7 of our producers to work on what we're calling transmedia suites, where they take a video clip, an online game, a mobile game, and an interactive whiteboard game, and try to connect them all thematically or by the same educational goal. And we're entering this with the premise that a kid who interacts with 2 of those will understand the educational concept better than a kid that only interacts with 1. That's kind of what we're trying to see if we can improve. And it's been a fun experience working with these producers to try to think across all those different media platforms from the beginning. We really are asking the TV script writers to be in the room at the same time, so you're writing the same story across it all, or trying to make sure that that educational goal is really building across these different platforms. It's pretty exciting, some of the experiments we've done with just individual platforms on touchscreens, for example, have made us realize that we also are reaching a point where the technology is more transparent. Kids can just jump right in and play in a way that they never were able to with that clunky mouse and keyboard. So I want to show one little usability clip. I think it's got its own called The Purpose of the Game. And this is from an app, Martha Speaks. It's developed by WGBH here in Boston. And this is just one of the kids in testing. We tested with 90.
I never know that word before.
So she just said she didn't know the word floral. If you could hear the audio in the game, Martha says find the floral plate. And then if you take too long or if you click on the wrong plate, you also get a little bit more explanation of what floral is. And she actually said almost exactly what Martha had said. That means flowers. So in pre and post tests, we saw a vocabulary improvement in the universal vocabulary used in the game of 31% over 2 weeks. This was 90 kids. We really didn't anticipate that strong of movement in a game this simple that quickly, but it kind of tipped everyone off to really, we're onto something really powerful here. So what happens if we then take that to all these other platforms as well? One of the things that's launching on Monday comes to us from the electric company. It's a game called Prankster Planet. And it's also doing some experiments with transmedia using animated interstitials from the show. So taking the characters from the show, putting them in an animated world, and ending in a cliffhanger that then pushes kids to a multi-level side-scrolling game that connects to the broadcast each day. So doing a little bit more of experimentation from TV to broadcast what's happening, and how do we reinforce the goals of what's happening in the show with this game experience, which is all focused on vocabulary, math-based vocabulary in the electric world. So the big push for us over this summer is doing a lot of research on all these different things we're developing and trying to just get more data. What are kids learning from these different media environments? How much do they need to play to get there? And how easily do they move between them? Does it help to work with more than one type of media? So I think the last thing I just want to say is that we're thinking also a lot about how this technology can inspire other types of behavior. We know that it's pretty exciting to take a linear narrative and then follow it up with an interactive game and then follow it up with a touchscreen experiment. We're hitting lots of different learning styles, and so we might be able to hit kids where they are in slightly different ways. But what can some of these games also inspire kids to do outside of this media environment? Or what can push them to a different kind of media environment? Yesterday I heard a presentation where someone was saying that and I'm sorry I don't have the exact data, but more kids know how to play a console game than tie their shoes. And another one that was like, more kids know how to use a browser than they know how to ride a bike. And I felt like this was a real opportunity for a challenge of how do we use some of this technology to inspire other real-world behavior. So I want to show a very short clip from some testing we did recently. We're doing a lot of experiments with augmented reality, and whether or not these kinds of 3D models in a real-world setting give kids a different kind of opportunity to play with math. Is there something that's going on with depth and perspective with augmented reality that we can harness for math education? And so we did we did 3 days of testing with lots of different augmented reality experiences that are out there right now for kids. And one of the things we were really testing for was usability and comprehension of instruction. How easily do kids get into this experiment? Well, it's actually pretty hard for them to hold a piece of paper up in front of a camera. So one of the things we wanted to test was just straight up navigation, and a lot of augmented reality uses that camera. So we pulled a game that has just launched from our site Wild Kratts, which focuses on animals, and did that at the beginning of the testing just so we could see how easily kids would pick up the navigation structure. And I just want to explain that what the instructions said to do was use your hand, the camera on the computer, use your hand to make the caracal leap into the air to catch the birds. And this is what Gabe did.
Here comes one now! Bonus! Great job!
He jumped up and down for 3 straight minutes. And if you watch his little brother in the background, he can't stand it. He wants to get in there too. He's starting to jump. It was supposed to be hand-based, but after Gabe jumped for 3 straight minutes, the focus group moderator finally turned off the game, and he was sweating and out of breath, and he said, "Can I please have a glass of water?" And we were like, this is a computer game. I mean, this isn't a Kinect, and I'm sure we'll hear about that in a second. It wasn't designed to be used in the living room, but here, this child jumped up and down for 3 minutes. And afterwards could explain what happened. He was like, well, the caracal needed to jump, so I jumped. He had to catch those birds. I don't have the film, but the next day a kid did it all with his mouth, because he was like, well, the caracal must eat the bird. So he was like, so it wasn't designed that way. But we saw kids understand what they were supposed to do and take it to another level. So we feel like there's a real opportunity. We're just scratching the surface here. Thanks.
Rachel, do you want to pull up Rachel's slide? And...
Sure. I'm Rachel Schiff. I'm a senior program manager here in Cambridge at the Microsoft Nerd Center, New England R&D. I work on the transmedia group within Xbox, and the official name of Xbox is the Interactive Entertainment Business. Normally I spend a lot of time defining transmedia, but in this crowd it's a known thing. We're really looking to extend the Xbox experiences off the Xbox across devices and places and media, and specifically harness the natural user interface that's possible with the Kinect. I just put a little shout out. Last year I was on a completely different team working on Kodu, our kids programming language for building games both on the Xbox and the PC. So I worked with a number of people here on that as well. Maybe if we could start with my videos, just so everyone knows what Kinect is. I didn't put any, my videos are mostly not of real kids. If you want to see real kids, go on YouTube, type in Kinect or Dance Central. There's a lot of really funny stuff. But this will give you a sense.
Which one did you want first?
The short one, yeah.
You are the controller. Introducing Kinect for Xbox 360.
Okay, that was just, you don't know what this Kinect is, a sensor for the Xbox. It's a camera with a 3D depth component. So you move around, it sees what you do. The goal is really to have that completely natural user interface that the kid in your test thought that a computer should have, which is that you move and that's reflected in what happens on the screen. My second video is the developers talking about some of their goals in building Kinect.
With Kinect Sports, what we wanted to show was the power of Kinect, the power of tracking your body. Amazing, incredible. I mean, these are all kind of adjectives, but these are the words that we do generally hear from people when they play the game for the first time.
First time that we played the bowling prototype, I just picked up the ball, rolled it down the lane, and it just worked. And I thought, what we've got here is magic.
It's hugely important that Kinect Sports can be played with others. I mean, that was one of the first things that we wrote down on a sheet of paper. Everything was about getting as many people involved as possible, and, you know, can we get the entire room playing a game of football, for instance? We've got table tennis, boxing, beach volleyball, football, track and field, bowling. We really see the competitive nature of people coming out when we get into multiplayer, especially sort of multiplayer in the same room, because other people can watch you, they can make fun of you if they want to.
One of the things that surprised me most is how competitive girls are actually when they play the game. Especially if you get two girls up together to play boxing and just stand out.
We want everybody in a party atmosphere to be able to drop in and drop out. My daughter can play it, I can play it, and her granny can play it.
Party mode is essentially a game mode where we divide the room in two. You're the red team over there, the blue team is over there. It kind of adds a real sense of fun to the proceeding. It almost feels a little bit like an interactive game show.
I can play together with my friends in the living room, but I can play with my friends over live as well. I can recognise my friends, not just by their avatars, but by their actual body movements and mannerisms sometimes.
We built in our hero moment. Hero moment in football, for instance, they'll just get a fantastic shot of the ball flying into the net.
When you score the goal in football and you've got that celebration at the side of the field, it's a proper superstar moment.
So in terms of what we're doing with Kinect, right, the first thing is just to have that science fiction like natural user interface. The machine sees what you do, knows what to do about it. And there's been a lot of neat hacking of that as well. One of the cool ones is doctors who had to figure out how to, when they're sterile, how are they going to use their computer? They hacked up a Kinect so they can use a hand gesture to move to the next record. You know, you would think they would have solved that already, but hey, this is something that we've all seen in movies, now is possible in reality. Here at MIT, they use the iRobot kit to hack up a Roomba so it can go around and build a 3D model of the spaces and with a 3D camera. So there is that, it gives the interface more of that human experience. But in terms of kids and games, the first thing is it gets them off the couch, right? Like, just as the baseline level, right? It takes gaming, which has been a relatively inactive activity and only involving the expressivity of your thumbs and your fingers. Now it's a full body, more expressive physical activity. So that's something that we're really excited about. And I feel like we've only started scratching the surface there. And there's a lot of neat real world tie-in that's possible there. Right, sports you may never have been exposed to. Maybe you try it out on Kinect and then you're going to go out for your track team. And I've certainly done more Kinect shot put than I have javelin, whatever all those track events are I've been doing, than I've ever done in real life. But it's something you become aware of real world opportunities that you wouldn't have known about before. The second piece, which I liked that video because the developers talked about it so much, was like the Kinect games were really built to encourage people playing together. Both people playing together in the existing, online Xbox Live way, but also very much that all the people in the room can play the game. And different games implement that in different ways, but it's something I've certainly seen in real life. And it's so nice compared to a lot of technologies today. You can walk into the room and be recognized and immediately be in the game. It takes away a lot of those hurdles of the setting in and the logging in. Oh, Jimmy's playing now, Joyce, you go, do your other thing. Everyone can play together. And that is, it's a really nice model of entertainment. In terms of other, just kind of what we've seen with kids, I think we see a lot of potential to connect, these experiences with other things going on, right? So that's kind of the transmedia piece, is we have this whole interface for interaction in the computer, but we can also tie it to larger things going on. That would be the larger transmedia vision of kind of the whole picture. It's like the content that's if anywhere that information comes from, the teacher could notify the parent and the school that they're learning about Mexico this week, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, like you're Mexico in the Kinect Sports Olympics. Whatever it is, that there's just that potential to use technology to link the home, the school, and the entertainment in a really great way. I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's go to Wendy.
Okay, well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. There's a lot of very familiar faces out there for me. But today, I'm going to talk to you about Nook Color, which is an e-reader tablet. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to hold or feel or see a Nook Color. Actually, at the they've got them here at the MIT bookstore, which is run by Barnes & Noble. But the Nook Color is a full color touchscreen e-reader device, and this week we announced a major software update. So not only is this fantastic e-reader device, but we also now have apps and the ability to shop for apps on the device. It's connected, we can also web search, and we've updated, it's an Android device, and we've upgraded it so you can do web video viewing as well. I run the Nook Kids business at Barnes & Noble, and it's a really fun job for me. It's different. We don't create content. You guys create content. We work with all of the major publishers to bring the content onto Nook Color for kids. We also have a Nook Kids app on iPad, so kids can access books from wherever. What's really important to us is that there are digital picture books for kids and digital chapter books for kids. We've got 350 picture books in our ecosystem and more than 12,000 chapter books for kids. And we know that kids are really interested in reading digitally. We also know that parents spend a lot of time worrying about what kind of screen time kids are having. They don't want empty calorie screen time. And so it's great for us to be providing kids with their favorite books, right? So, you know, I've got Go Dog Go on here and Splat the Cat on here, and you know, I had nothing to do with creating those great stories. I just am involved in converting them to a great experience here. All of the books for kids are available. Either kids can just read them digitally, and all of the kids' picture books, well, I'll show you in the video. All of the kids' picture books are in a landscape display to sort of protect the original artwork and illustrations from these books. Some of the books have narration in them, so if kids want to have the stories read to them, they can. You can always turn the narration off and read it yourself. And now, with our new software update, we also have interactivity built into some of these picture books. So the interactivity is the kind of thing that you would do with your child if you were reading with a kid in your lap. It's not that we're trying to turn books into video games or anything like that. Maybe if we see the video, you'll see kids in a Noble store trying this out, and you can get a sense.
Oh, look at that one. Oh, that's really cute.
Magical creatures appeared from inside an ancient wardrobe. If you have enough color, then it's just on here. It's easier than looking through your whole house and thinking, where could that book be? Like, if you thought, like, something in the book was really, really cute, with this you can just zoom up on it.
Do you want one?
Should we buy one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our marketing folks put this So that's the Nook picture book experience. It's great for us to also have apps. We have ebooks as apps on here, and you know, we're looking all the time at new formats for picture books, new formats to present to kids, and always expanding the experience. We're really at total infancy of this. We know that kids are interested in reading books digitally. We know that there's so much to do in terms of what else we can do here. I'm kind of obsessed with all kinds of new formats, like pop-up books and all kinds of other things that if you think about what it means to create a book 20 years ago or 50 years ago, or what it's going to mean to create a book, you know, this year, next year, it's going to be entirely different in 10 years from now.
Great. Want to get the last slide? So while we bring that up, briefly, my new company is focused on helping to build pathways for kids, mostly starting in middle school, although we start sometimes in late elementary school. We look for kids' natural interests. We think it's easier to push a rock downhill than uphill. Things like making games, building businesses, cooking, making things. We look to build a gateway product, often a game-based learning product, where kids can explore, fail in a safe environment, level up, and then roll it out as a service versus a product that can be continually optimized and surrounded by peer mentors, industry mentors, and build pathways. So that's sort of the thesis. Our first product, similar to some of the things we've talked about, is in partnership with the MacArthur Foundation, Institute of Play, and the Quest to Learn School that Karen mentioned, that teaches middle school kids how to design games. I won't go much into that because we don't have much time, but I'll show a short video where I think the kids articulate better than I ever could why designing games has so much value. So this is a video, we ran a national video game design competition for middle school students. It was announced by the president as part of the Educate to Innovate initiative. And these are the 12 winners, and we just sent them flip cams. We were curious, A, if we just sent them flip cams, what they would shoot. And would we get the flip cams back? They all sent them back. And it was very interesting. So this is all shot by the kids, articulating why making games had value to them. So if we want to pull that up.
My name is Sharina and I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hi, my name is
I am Jacob Andrew Cothran. I live in Reno, Nevada, and I am in 6th grade.
My name is Sharina and I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hi, my name is Mark Breton and I live in Garland, Texas.
I'm Jasper Huguenin from Mercer Island, Washington. I'm in the 7th grade.
My name's Danny, and I go to the Nightingale Lamprey School in New York City.
My name is Mohammed Al-Fatirida. I'm a homeschooling incubator, and my favorite subjects are math and science.
My name is Kendall McGowan. I'm a 7th grader in Brookline, Massachusetts.
Hello, my name is Joshua, and I'm 10 years old.
I'm in school in 6th grade at South New York.
My name is Jeffrey. I live in Witt, Massachusetts. I'm a 5th grader.
My name is Tate Welty. I go to Ordinal Schools as a 5th grader.
My name is Reese Wilkinson. I'm 9 years old. I live in Maynard, Texas.
When I was 3 years old, I played my first video game.
I'm a really big fan of simulation games.
Computer games, RPG, adventure, and action.
I like story games, same way I like reading. It's like the person who made the game has got his whole universe made up.
I got into game making when I was 10. I decided if I was going to play games, why don't I make my own game?
The first really interesting program I wrote was a program to teach me my multiplication tables.
My goals for the game was to make it educational.
I wanted this game to be fun, but I also wanted to inform kids about the ocean while they're playing.
I created this game because I wanted as many kids as possible to learn how to program.
It's about sustainability. If you eat all the plants too quickly, then you won't have any left.
I designed it so that the player would use their imagination and creativity to help clean up the world's environmental problems.
I just start out kind of simple,
drawing the sprites with stick figures and everything.
While I was making my game, I used comments from my teacher, classmates, and friends to make my game more fun.
Probably my favorite part of building this game was testing it. I built a game that I enjoyed playing.
It teaches a lesson about teamwork. After that, I took the game and gave it to my cousins. This is my user testimony. I took the feedback, made it better, and then gave it back to them and see what they said.
Then I had my dad play it to make sure it was challenging enough for adults.
This is a lot harder than I thought.
Video games.
It gives kids power and can be very empowering for everyone to learn how to program.
Hopefully in the near future, I will find the time to create an even more interesting story rather than just a simple adventure game.
It could be even better, even cool, even funnier.
When I grow up, I want to be a computer programmer.
I might be a doctor when I grow up.
I want to be a professional video game tester, or a professional video game designer.
You'll be seeing me making games in the future.
So a lot of what we think about, our pathways. So we think about how to get kids into this world. They're naturally interested. So we think about starting with design versus programming, which can be intimidating, but then building gateways to great projects like Kodu, like Scratch, Game Maker, Game Salad, that can go into programming in a constrained way and then into unconstrained programming, Flash, Java. Some kids want to go into an art path, 2D, 3D. Some kids want to go into an entrepreneurship path. And then building industry mentorships. We're working with all the major game publishers to have their employees become mentors, but also peer mentorships, etc. So lots of cool things that you saw, all harnessing hardware, software. First of all, thanks, Scott. That was a phenomenal ability to get all those videos, all of which, by the way, were in different formats, in different media. So to me, I'll never forget it. But I know a lot of people in the room, we know a lot of people, there's a lot of people here who are already kind of convinced that technology can really empower. I kind of want to flip and say, where is it not working? Where are we having unintended negative consequences? Because that's often not focused at these conferences. And I'm going to throw out two and ask the panel to comment on those two or to mention other ones. The very thing that makes games so engaging, and often digital media so engaging, can lead to lack of self-regulation, addiction, too much time on the computer. I speak to parents groups all over the country. It's more than content, it's the #1 concern I get. And as a parent of 2 middle school kids, one who can regulate better than the other, I know that it is an issue, no matter how good quality it is. I recently toured the major game companies in Korea where there's a serious addiction problem. It has some of the most innovative games, some of the highest per capita gaming, but is also a kind of harbinger of what I think we're going to see here. And there are ways I believe one can deal with it. I'll throw out one, which is I started to look at some experiments that they were doing where the kids would decide how long they want to play, because often they want to self-regulate, and the characters in the game would get tired in relation to how long they wanted to play. And it's amazing how kids will listen to the characters. The Wii just has a bunch of the Wii games I saw this for the first time. I was playing the Wii with my kids, and it popped up and said, you know, you've been playing for an hour, don't you think you should take a break? And both kids put down their Wii remote. They would never listen to me. But that's an example of a serious issue, but also innovative ways to deal with it that I think we need to look at. We heard a lot about remix early on, and we are big fans. The product we do has an entire remix culture to it. But when we observe these communities, all of these user-generated communities, we are not teaching our kids how to be responsible citizens in these communities. And a lot of scary stuff is happening in those communities. And even if you just think about, you know, we teach a child to look you in the eye, shake your hands, but online, don't reveal who you are. How do kids behave? If they remix something, do they thank somebody? How do they attribute that? This stuff is not being scaffolded, and I think actually unproductive behavior can happen along with the productive behavior. So I'll throw those two challenges out, and let's do a whip around. We'll go back this way. What are you seeing that concerns you as a parent or a niece or as an aunt? I guess not uncle. So I'll throw that out there.
To me?
Yeah, and we'll go around this way.
Well, I think, you know, kids have access to all this technology, and what they have to understand is what to do with it. So those of us in this room, we have a responsibility to create good content. And when we put technology in the hands of kids, what are they going to do with it? You know, I mean, I know tons of families who have iPads and other devices, and now, you know, the Nook Color with all these tablet features. If you buy something because you want to encourage your kid to read, encourage your kid to read. I've talked to adults who say, I don't want my kid, my 3rd graders start reading ebooks because there's a dictionary built right into the ebook and they'll just automatically look up words. And I think, like, really? That's really your worry about your 3rd graders? You know, I mean, they've always had a dictionary right next to them on the table and they've never looked up a word before, so I wouldn't worry about that as a fear. But you know, I would think that a fear would be when you put a tablet in front of a kid and you want them to read a book, make sure that they're reading a book and that they're not getting lazy and just going to a video or something else like that. And it's about teaching kids what to do. Whatever you put in front of a kid is going to be an experience that they're going to learn from. Just put something that you want them to learn in front of them.
Yeah, so 2 quick notes on that. There's a bunch of folks here from Sesame Workshop, and we work closely with the Joan Gaspini Center. A video that I saw there 2 years ago is still seared in my head, where they were videotaping kids doing searches, younger kids, and kids would find their way into a product like a Barnes & Noble or a Costco search thinking it was Google, and following it all the way through as though they were within Google. It was really provocative. And if you stood back as a parent and looked at that child, you would say, wow, they're digitally literate, look how fast they're going. But what they were doing was a little bit scary. So just because we see kids interacting with the technology doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it in an effective and productive way. So very interesting. Rachel?
I think certainly in the Xbox space, the regulation issues you mentioned are very real. I think, as you said, it's something to be conscious of in game design, and it's something with Kinect, Xbox is reaching more younger kids, and we are looking at sort of potentially managing the overall experience more. So to the extent that somewhere it's known, oh, you played this game and this game and this game, oh, that adds up to a lot of time, have some sort of message. Or also add in real world activities. Hey, you can get gamer points for going out in your yard and doing this thing, or reading a real book, whatever it is, or a digital book. But to have the couch potato type activities, both making them more active with Kinect and then making sure your world encompasses more than just the screen time aspect.
Sure.
I think one of the things that we're trying to think about a lot is the parent-child interaction. Exactly that we always hear about parents saying that they're concerned about their kids watching too much TV, but the computer feels better to them because they know kids are interacting. And we did some eye tracking testing where we were watching what on the screen kids were watching. And we realized there was a real break with kids at about, it was 6.5. The kids that were younger than 6.5, if a video came up anywhere on the screen, the eye tracking stuff showed that the kids zoned in on that video and stopped doing anything else. They stopped clicking on things, they just were watching that video. The kids who were older tended to just pause the video because they were trying to get to a game. They didn't get very distracted. But it was very enlightening for us to realize that we needed to really think about that with usability with those younger kids. So we made the video screen on PBSKids.org much smaller, and it ends quickly. And then when you're watching the video player, you don't want kids to just zone out, so we had a prompt come up, the character comes up and says, do you want to go play something else now? But we all were kind of shuddering to think how long it had been the other way. And then realizing that the time spent was really kids kind of zoning out, not doing anything. The other thing is trying to think about leaving breadcrumbs for parents somehow, finding a way to bring parents into that experience later. The app that I talked about earlier, the Martha Speaks app, when we gave that iPod Touch to kids, we also put a parents app on there so that parents could record anything they had observed with their kids, and they could leave it as voice, or they could type it in. And one of the interesting things that came up is there's a dress-up game in there where kids dress up a dog, and then if they saved their pictures, it actually saved to the photo gallery on the iPod Touch. And we had all these parents say, well, later I was playing with it, and then I found all these pictures, and so I could talk to my kids about it. And that hadn't occurred to us before, to try to leave something for the parent elsewhere on the device, especially if it's a pass-back thing where parents are handing an iPhone back. There's a way to actually bring the parent into it. So just trying to think creatively about bringing those worlds together.
So we only have a few minutes. Any questions from the audience about anything that the folks up here are doing, or things that you see that you think are real issues that are just never discussed at these conferences when it comes to technology and kids?
Hi, I had a question, I guess for all of you, in terms of what you think about when you're designing games that speak to children's interests or their potential interests without pigeonholing them. And I guess specifically thinking about boys and girls, and how I think there are a lot of traditional stereotypes of how boys learn or what boys are interested in versus girls. And so how do you cross-pollinate games so that the lessons are, because sometimes the theme might be interesting to boys or girls, for example, trains, let's say, or something like that. How do you ensure that the lessons are not only within games for boys or games for girls, like cross-pollinating educational ideas or design ideas?
I can touch briefly on our experience with Games for Mechanic, because there was about a year of research, and that was a big thread in the research. Just quickly, some of the things we found, and this is still being discovered, we found at a late elementary and middle school age, we were very successful at getting boys and girls engaged in the product. And the product was designed very carefully. You could play a male character or a female character. It's about game making. We found that girls made games very differently than boys made games, especially at the beginning. But at the end, they were very similar, which was very interesting. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about that. We found it very difficult with a game construction product to get girls interested starting in 9th grade. I mean, so there's different age points where you can find a gateway product, but I think it's critical in the early ages to expose a number of pathways. At an age before people have gotten, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do this, and then catch that pathway, and while you're building one pathway, expose other pathways that organically come. So we find a lot of the girls that engage in the project want to go into the digital storytelling, to frame the games with comic creation, graphic novel, and so we're building that out. But that's one example. I don't know if there's others in terms of sort of gender differences with technology. And if not, there's a bunch of other questions, so. Okay, let's go to the next question.
This isn't a question, well, I have to forgive me because this is my first time, but I did want to share with you that I was recently with a pediatrician here in Boston where I live, and he shared with me that one of the negative things that he's seeing is that in their practice, they are having to deal a lot with insomnia issues for children.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, very interesting. Has he published? Is there something we could look at?
No, but I'll be glad to give you that information. And what they're saying is that as a practice, they're having to develop strategies about how to guide children and families on this insomnia issue. So I'd be very happy to put you together because I thought it was, very interesting.
Yeah, that's a great issue to look at, and it seems very testable as well. Question back there?
More, I guess, a question. Comment. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Jason.
Comment, question. So I guess my issue is more about well-roundedness. It seems that more and more in this day and age, kids are spending more and more time with screens. But I thought it was kind of telling in that great video that you showed about all the other things that kids were doing, be it swimming, Diablo. Sorry about that. It must be me. I'm just curious about what you all, four of you are so heavily in technology, what do you do to encourage well-roundedness in kids? Because I believe that well-roundedness is what's going to make the game changers of the next generation. And I'm glad that you showed kids doing things other than spending time in front of screens. How do we encourage that more?
Well, I mean, all I can add to that is you're right. And starting, there was a Scholastic research report that talked about kids between 5 and 9, I think were the ages, and the time that they spend reading books and for fun, and the time they spend doing things for fun. And as they get older, they stop doing as much reading activity and start spending way more time in gaming, and then cell phone use becomes the biggest piece of the pie there. So again, I think it's about making compelling content and compelling experiences for kids to do that's good for them.
I think just to add on to that, one of the exciting things about all this technology is the opportunity for kids to be seeing what other kids are doing in different ways, and different kinds of collaboration networks, so kids are working with other kids. So we've been trying to think a lot about how kids can follow some of their interests through this technology. How does playing this game, that we know is based on a math concept, how can we then push them to something maybe in the real world that ties to that? Or, I mean, how many of those games were about the things that kids were really passionate about? So, as the video said, letting kids become a master of the subject then encourages them to go explore that subject outside.
Often subjects that they're uncomfortable with. We just got an email from a teacher who had a student who made the student used the tool to make a game about diabetes, which is something when you're young and you're diagnosed is very difficult to talk about, and it got them comfortable talking about it in a medium they were comfortable with. So it's another transference to the real world. I think we have time for one more.
We have one more question, but it's what a perfect segue.
I was just going to ask again, as people so engaged in technology, what do you think should be kept sacred in, quote, the real world? What experiences should be sort of left alone for kids to experience, actually feeling that wind in their hair?
Wind in the hair?
Actually, what I'm referring to is actually a great thing. I worked at Nickelodeon many years ago, and there was a famous Nickelodeon commercial, or it was an internal Nickelodeon promo that talked about, actual reality. Feel the wind. It was a kid playing basketball, and he was like, feel the ball in your hand. Feel the wind blowing in your hair. And it was a comment on, as great as television is, as great as interactive technology is, there's also something pretty wonderful about going out in the court and feeling the wind in your hair. So that's what
I would just argue that it's not an either or, right? We all live in Boston where it's really cold all winter. Like, as much as you would love to be doing things outside all winter, there's a lot of time that you're sort of stuck inside.
Right. I wasn't saying an either or. I'm just curious, like, what you think as technology-focused people, like, what should be kept live?
See, I would still say, like, do as much as you can live, and yet so much of there's so much, like, rich system stuff maybe that you can only do on a computer. I don't know, I don't so much, I would say do as much as you can live, and yet so many of those things, swimming, the parents gotta drive the kid to the pool, you schedule the lesson, you pay for the lesson, whereas a lot of these virtual experiences, you can have them, in school, in the after-school program, no additional cost, all that type of thing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of being outside, but that's not my job. I spend a lot of time talking to parents about reading bedtime stories with my kid is the most private, special time I have with my kid, and do not mess with it, do not touch it, do not bring technology into my world. And then when you do that, and you take books and you convert them in digitally and elegantly, and you can sort of sometimes inspire sometimes a better connection between a dad and a kid at bedtime, or create a wonderful experience for a mom and a kid at bedtime, and let kids, record their own voices, their moms record their own voices, and enhancing that thing that parents and kids love so much together. And again, it doesn't have to be either or, but there are things we can do to make those perfect moments. Maybe we can enhance them. That people can even think about what we can do about that yet.
The one thing that came to mind when you asked the question, and again, this can be very much enhanced, especially because it's a difficult thing to do just financially, is travel, just being in other countries and other places and getting the full sensibility of a different environment. Now, obviously games and virtual worlds can do that for a lot of kids that don't have the capability of travel, but there is something, and just having grown up in different countries, there's something very unique about having that perspective that can't be fully captured in the virtual. It's a hard thing to make available to everybody though. Okay.
Sorry to rush you. Thank you all. And all our panelists will be around.